A disturbing find in southern Kentucky, and now animal advocates are pushing for answers. They want to know who is dumping dead dogs.
It is happening in the Daniel Boone National Forest in McCreary County. WKYT's Garrett Weimer was tipped off about it and went to investigate. What he found may be upsetting to some viewers. It is our top story at 6.
We've been able to identify the dogs and where they came from by these collars.
For an animal lover like Melissa,
it's heartbreaking.
It's hard not to dream about the lives these dogs lived before she found them.
You know, you think about these dogs, each of them was a puppy at some point. A puppy that belonged to somebody.
But now, 6 collars in her hand, Melissa knows
this is all that's left.
It's why on this rainy December day, in a very remote area of McCreary County, we're driving 2.5 miles out a 1-lane gravel road, searching for something we hoped we wouldn't find.
Bags, bones, carcasses, animals in different stages of decomposition.
The discovery, dozens of dogs, dead and dumped. It makes no sense, even to these animal rescue workers who have seen a lot.
I don't have the answers. This is shocking to us too, because it's very confusing on why it's happening, because it shouldn't be.
A man who did not want to be on camera says he first stumbled upon the dogs shortly after he bought land out Andy Watson Road that he says butts up to the National Forest.
There are several different dump sites just in this one section, a number of dead dogs scattered over this hillside. Some are in trash bags, some are rotting out in the open. And yes, you can even smell them.
A little farther up the hill, just past the eerie guardians of a small cemetery, we find another, less hallowed graveyard. Amid skulls and bones, the bodies of 7 dogs thrown out like trash.
And it's disrespectful to the life of the dog who was failed by humans while it was alive, and now it's being failed by humans again. And that's not right.
These 7 dogs seem to match those seen in the back of a truck, spotted December 20th on a trail cam put up by the property owner, driving up the hill with dogs and going down the hill with an empty truck bed.
Our stomachs are starting to flip a little bit.
Melissa had come up here to check those animals for injuries. She found none.
They appear to have been euthanized and frozen.
And healthy.
They looked healthy.
That raises even more questions. Dumping dead animals out in the open is against state law.
We have laws. But they're not enforced. We want these laws enforced.
I don't get emotional except when I hold these collars.
Melissa says she took off the dog's collars as a sign of respect.
I don't know what I'm going to do with them. I feel like I owe them. I feel like I owe them the respect of keeping them. Unless I have to turn them over, that's what I plan to do.
And she vows to make sure whoever's doing this is stopped. In McCreary County, Garrett Weimer, WKYT.
We have an update now to a WKYT investigation that we brought you last week. Dozens of dead dogs found dumped in the Daniel Boone National Forest.
Investigative reporter Garrett Weimer has been following up on tips and working the phone since that original story aired. Garrett, you have now confirmed where those dogs are actually coming from.
Southern Kentucky Animal Shelter says they know at least some of the dogs had been theirs and blame the dumping on a volunteer who had offered to bury them on his personal property.
These 7 dogs should have been buried. Volunteers with the Animal Protection League of McCreary County claim they were told they would be. They say after a licensed veterinarian came to the shelter to euthanize those dogs, the APL gave them to another man who told them he'd bury them on his land. But they weren't buried on December 20th, the day a trail cam spotted the dogs in the back of a truck heading up Andy Watson Road.
Our stomachs are starting to flip a little bit.
They weren't buried December 21st when 2 members of a rescue group in the area say they went there to try to identify the dogs. And they weren't buried on December 26th when WKYT Investigates found the dogs' bodies out in the open behind some trees at the top of the hill. That wasn't the only area we found them.
There are several different dump sites just in this one section. A number of dead dogs scattered over this hillside. Some are in trash bags, some are rotting out in the open, and yes, you can even smell them.
That's right along the road on the way up the hill. The bodies of those dogs in various states of decomposition. A volunteer told me they don't know if those dogs came from their shelter too. Employees say in 2023, the Animal Protection League of McCreary County took in more than 300 dogs. The vast majority went to a rescue group. The shelter did say it had to euthanize 37 dogs because of aggression or court orders. We don't know exactly how long the shelter had been giving dogs' bodies to that volunteer, but workers say it had been a few months. One property owner in the area we talked to says he's noticed animal dumping since August.
And as for the man we're told is responsible for at least the 7 dogs found most recently, right now we don't know who he is or if he might face charges. State police and the U.S. Forest Service are still investigating. Officials say that dump site, again, does cross onto federally managed land in the Daniel Boone National Forest. Shelter workers insist where those 7 were found is private property belonging to that man who they say offered to give them a proper burial.
Well, Garrett, certainly this is disturbing. The shelter also tells you that they are changing some procedures now to make sure that something like this never happens again.
Yeah, employees tell me from now on they will take the dogs to the vet to have them euthanized there, and then they say either the vet will bury them or they will have them cremated. Obviously, they say the goal is not to have to euthanize at all, but sometimes they say they don't have much of a choice.
All right, Garrett Weimer, thank you tonight. And dumping animal carcasses out in the open is a violation of state law. Dumping on federal land is a federal crime.